neighbor runs over my slow down safety cones, so I fill them with concrete. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. So this was quite a few years ago. One day my kids were skating in a quarter pipe when this truck comes around the corner with a bubba driving, and he sees my daughter come off the quarter pipe. And instead of slowing down, he floors it and rips past my house, still accelerating, while yelling something about keep out of the road. I yelled back for him to slow down. The following weekend, I'm out mowing my lawn and I see this guy coming. So I walk out to the edge and try to wave him down to talk. And Bubba floors it again, laughing like a maniac as he goes flying by with his engine redlining. This guy's a nut. So I go to the hardware store and pick up 3 of those 3-foot orange safety cones. And I put a sign on each one of them. Slow down, residential neighborhood, kids at play. A few days later, I come outside and find the cones have been run over. I already know who did it. I'm pretty ticked off, like really angry. And in that anger, I came up with my most brilliant plan. I went to the hardware store and purchased 3 new cones, along with cement and steel rebar. I filled those things with rebar and cement and let them set. After the cones were ready, I put them back out in the side of the road by my house with the same 3 signs as before. It didn't take long. 2 days later, I'm tinkering in my garage and I hear that truck engine revving up as the bubba goes pedal to the metal. I look up just in time to see his truck steer towards the shoulder to run over the cones. It was a beautiful sight to behold, like nothing I've ever seen before. He hit the first cone with his bumper and the cone fell forward and rotated the base up towards the engine block and actually lifted the front of his truck upwards, right as his front passenger wheel made a direct connection with the second cone and launched his truck even higher into the air. The third cone also made a direct hit on his right tire suspension as his truck came down to a screeching halt. There were lots of fluids running around from under his truck, and his passenger tire was angled inwards at a 90-degree angle. Bubba was ticked off and started screaming about how I wrecked his truck and how I'm gonna pay. I yelled back and said, well, then let's call the cops and get them out here to make a report. And you can go ahead and tell them how you were racing down the road and intentionally ran over the safety cones. Or I can call you a tow truck. Which will it be? We called a tow truck. I never did see Bubba drive down my street anymore after that incident. I was worried he'd try to get revenge, but nothing ever happened, and we moved out a couple years later. Edit, for those of you talking about the legality of what I did and getting busted or sued, let me clarify things here. First of all, this happened a long time ago. The legal time limit is expired for anyone to do anything about it in any legal capacity. Also, I consider myself sharper than the average bear, and I didn't enact my plan without thinking it through and thinking about the consequences of my actions. I know a thing or two about how the law works. If Bubba wanted to call the cops, I'd have gone inside my home and locked the door. If the police arrived, I'd tell them through my locked security screen I don't answer questions, and my only statement would be that I only speak through my attorney. At that point, police would make their report and run it up the chain of command. If the state or local prosecutor wanted to conduct an investigation, I'd go with an attorney and deny any involvement. They'd have to, at that point, decide how much time do they have to try and investigate this matter, and what is the likelihood of a conviction. Since I lived in a big city, I'm sure they had a lot worse crap happening that would be taking up their caseload. But I get it. Some of you think I'm a jerk. I don't think you're a jerk for this. I think it's a pretty extreme move and you did a lot of damage to his truck knowing what was going to happen, but you're looking out for your kids, who should be able to play safely. Mind you, they shouldn't be playing in the road, but this guy shouldn't be speeding through a residential area. I'm not too sure what this guy's problem was. Sounds like he just had an alpha complex and wanted to swing it around a bit. That didn't work out for him very well though, did it? You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easymode, also linked below. And don't forget to subscribe. Karen reels me in with a good salary, only to later say it was a typo. I was fresh out of high school and getting tired of working 1 part-time and 2 casual jobs, so I took the advice of a family member to interview to be a caretaker for a friend's kids. The interview went well, if not slightly creepy. Karen kept saying how pretty both her and her husband thought I was, and how if this arrangement goes well, we could look into you moving in with us. May have been innocent, but it did not seem like it. She then goes on a tirade about how her past daycare was abusive for not feeding her child when he threw a tantrum and refused to eat the lunch the daycare provided him. Although she did admit to me that he was still given snacks throughout the day. After that, she went into what the job entailed. I would work 40 to 48 hours a week. I had to take the children, male toddler and female baby, somewhere exciting every day. Don't take them to the same old park every day. I was to clean, go shopping, and prepare food for her kids throughout the day. Not that frozen crap. And supper for them at least twice a week. If you feel comfortable. Or it would be nice to come home to a home-cooked meal not made by me, wink wink. Side note, the toddler was allowed to drink pop and eat candy and chocolate, but I couldn't feed this kid some dino nuggets. After the interview, I went home only to realize in all that chaos, I never asked about how much I'd be paid. Well, I did near the beginning, but she said we would negotiate later. So I messaged her and she replied, "How does $11 per sound?" I was excited. Though the job seemed like a lot of hard work and paid a little less than my other job, I got way more hours. So I accepted. Later, we were talking about what day I would start, 2 weeks from then. And then she said, "Starting off, we agreed on $1,100 per month. If after the first month you're doing a good job, we can change it to $1,200. Wait, what? Maybe $11 is too much for a full-time sitter in the early 2010s? I don't know. I immediately message her. "What? You messaged that I would be making $11 per hour." She never said hour, but like $11 for anything other than an hour didn't make sense. That's ridiculous. That's more than I pay at daycare. I never said that. I then sent her a screenshot with the message mentioning $11 per. Oops, I must have gotten the punctuation wrong. I meant $1,100 per. Why didn't you clarify that it was per month? You didn't ask. She then tried negotiating the price. Well, we could probably pay $1,200 right now, but that would mean no raise for quite some time. After this, I told her I wasn't going to be doing it because I would legit be making around $5 an hour. She then left me 4 voicemails saying I was being very selfish, unprofessional, and I should have brought this up sooner. I then ghosted. This was probably a jerk move. I then heard from the family member that Karen was forced to go back to the old daycare. Also, please keep in mind these people were very well off, richer families with good jobs. Yeah, that sounds like way less than you should be getting for all that you have to put in. I get that you're a kid out of high school and it's just a babysitting job, but at the end of the day, they're taking up your time every week. 40 to 48 hours of it. They need to understand that your time has value. You could be anywhere else doing another job and making more, but you're choosing to be there working for them. And that's something that they need to appreciate and pay you for accordingly. And I know some people will argue that babysitting's an easy job, but it can also be a very tough job with a lot of responsibility. You're in charge of these incredibly fragile, incredibly important people in other people's lives. That can be a lot of pressure to take on for a young kid. Not to mention how babysitters tend to be treated by parents because they're younger, and they just get worked up over every little thing about their child. I'm sorry, this isn't the 60s anymore. You gotta pay people properly for babysitting. Some jerk at work keeps stealing all my pens, so I lay a trap to get him in serious trouble. So I work in an aerospace facility that's large enough that you'll never meet everyone who works there. It's the type of place where everything you need, pens included, are provided for you. However, as free pens go, you already know they're the crappy ones. I'll just buy my own pens, thanks. Around the time of this incident, I had just taken a promotion. Part of the deal was that I'd be working second shift instead of first. Okay by me. As I'm getting used to my new schedule, I started losing my pens. Not abnormal for me, but it was happening too often that I'd come into work and I swear swear I put my pen right here last night, but now I can't find it. I became suspicious of my now previous coworkers who knew where I usually stash things, and I hatched a plan. First, I had to make sure my pen was indeed being taken rather than me losing my mind due to my new schedule. I bought a pack of Pilot G2s, the best pens out there, and laid a trap. Now, I work in the machine shop and there are toolboxes everywhere. I set up and run multiple machines, but there's a particular machine that everybody knows is kinda my home base. In that accompanying toolbox, I left a pen in the top drawer right front and center for a pen thief to find, and sure enough, it was gone the next day. I'm not crazy, and the hunt has begun. In my line of work, we have controlled documents. Every piece and part is documented and serialized. One of our huge taboos is using any color other than black on these documents. It was obvious what I had to do. When I bought my last pack of G2s to avoid having to use the craptacular provided pens, I also bought a set of colored G2s. I took the ink cartridge from a pink pen and used a black Sharpie to hide both the ink in the tube and the colored cap on top of the cartridge. It looked a bit ugly, but I knew I wasn't dealing with a pro here. I placed the pink, now black, cartridge in an unsuspecting black pen body and left it in my usual hiding spot. The next day, when I come into work, sure enough, the pen was gone. My trap had worked. First thing I heard in my shift pass-down meeting was how some jerk used pink ink on a work order this morning, and I'd better make sure for the millionth time that my new employees knew better than to do something that dumb. I didn't even have to fess up to setting a trap. I nailed that fool right to the wall, and no one knows what I did. Suck it, pen thief. Now, this one feels like a totally relatable story. Definitely something actually grounded in reality and not some Karen just being crazy. We've all had those situations where people keep stealing your stuff at work. At my personal last job, I can't tell you how many pens would go missing on a daily basis. There were enough pens brought in that there should have been 3 for every person working there, and yet you could still never find one. I don't know what it is about pens that kleptomaniacs are so drawn to, but we've all experienced it. Our original poster here found a unique and rather simple way of dealing with it. I don't really know if this is going to solve the problem long term. I'm sure they'll still be stealing pens, but maybe they'll pay a little more attention to which one they're stealing at least. And hopefully not from our original poster anymore. I knew someone kept going into my bedroom, so I hid a camera in there to prove it. I, 22-year-old male, live in an apartment with my roommate, also 22-year-old male. We're both attending college part-time and get along well with one another. The lease is under my name only. My roommate is not planning on living in the apartment after college. I do work night shifts 3 days a week. My hours are 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. He sometimes has his girlfriend stay overnight, which is no problem as my boyfriend will stay when he visits as well. When I come home from work, I've been noticing my bed has been a mess, and I found clothing that did not belong to me in the sheets. I'm awful with confronting people, but I know it's not my boyfriend as he lets me know beforehand when he's staying over. I ordered a camera and placed it in a spot where it can't be seen. I went to work and the camera app notified me there was motion in the room. I turned the camera on and saw my roommate and his girlfriend on my bed. I was mortified and stopped watching the video. My boyfriend came over in the morning and I showed him the video of my roommate and girlfriend on my bed. My boyfriend texts the video to my roommate, and he texts back that he wants to talk when he gets home. Roommate and I talk about the situation, and I tell him that it's disgusting that he and his girlfriend are using my bed. Roommate's defense is that the bed is more comfortable than his. His girlfriend comes over in the evening and she starts attacking me for putting a camera in the apartment. Am I the jerk for putting a camera in my bedroom? This sounds more like your roommate's girlfriend is deflecting from the fact that she's embarrassed and got caught. There should be no issue with you having a camera in your bedroom because they shouldn't be going in your bedroom, period. And the excuse of the bed being better is just one of the weakest ones I've ever heard. That really doesn't matter in this case. This is a matter of invading personal space and getting your guys' fluids all over someone else's bed. It's completely inappropriate no matter which way you look at it. Just stick to your own bed. It's really not that big an ask. Neighbor Karen demands we replace our fence with something more secure. So I get the most secure thing I can find. Our neighbors can be funny people, nice one minute and moody the next. There was a rickety old fence between our properties which I owned. We'd patched it up a few times, but didn't really have the money to totally replace 80 feet of bespoke-sized fences and posts at that time. The neighbors have complained a few times about our fence. They have 10 dogs and have spent a lot of money on landscaping their garden. They demanded we replace the fence because they need a secure boundary for the dogs, but made it very clear they were not contributing to the costs. It's not unreasonable, but the way they demanded rubbed me the wrong way. Generally, in the UK, there are no HOA rules on old builds, so I can replace the wooden fence with anything we like, as long as it's on our land and is no more than 2 meters high. So last month we got a quote and arranged for a firm to replace the fencing. I informed the neighbors and picked a day they would be at work so not to ruin the surprise. When they got home, they found the wood fence and wooden posts had been replaced with 6 feet concrete posts and a wall of concrete panels. Now they look out of their kitchen onto what resembles the Berlin Wall. I also made sure the smooth face of the concrete panels are pointing towards us. We have bushes along our side, so wouldn't see it anyway, but their side is right next to their patio area. They haven't approached us about it yet, but my husband told me he could see their wife in the garden from his office window, and she had a face like thunder. Hey, she asked for secure, you gave her secure. Ain't no dogs getting through a solid concrete wall. Maybe if they had offered to contribute a little bit, then they would have had some say in what kind of fence was going up. Too bad they decided to be jerks about it. Maybe our original poster should put a watchtower up as well, to add to the Berlin atmosphere. I told my mother-in-law if she says one more negative thing about my wedding, she's not going to be invited. Okay, so I, 26-year-old female, am Indian, and my fiancé, 26-year-old male, is white. That never really caused problems for us, and we've been together for 4 years. My mother-in-law, 46-year-old female, and I aren't particularly close, but it's never caused the blow-ups like what I've seen in some of these other stories. I decided to include mother-in-law in my wedding planning as a nice gesture, and thought she could help out a little. Colin and I decided that our wedding was going to have the elements of a traditional Indian wedding beforehand. Mother-in-law endlessly critiqued everything I've said was going to be in the wedding, such as me wearing a red lehenga choli because white was the symbol of holy matrimony, how clunky my wedding jewelry was, the designs of the tablecloths, the flowers in our arrangements, how many people from my side of the family were attending, everything. I tried to hold out for Colin's sake, but I eventually snapped when my mother-in-law told me that my curly hair was unruly and unfit for a wedding since I decided to not straighten it for the wedding. When I invited her and my sister Sarah, 23-year-old female, to look at possible hairstyles, I told my mother-in-law that if she said one more thing about the wedding, she'd be uninvited. And that clearly ticked her off because she got up and left straight away to complain to her husband about it. Hours later, I got texts from my father-in-law talking about how disrespectful I was to threaten his wife for being uninvited to her own son's wedding, and that I should apologize immediately. Both Colin and Sarah said that mother-in-law was pushing it with what she said, and my reaction was understandable. But I keep getting texts from my father-in-law and mother-in-law shaming me over it. Am I the jerk? Yikes. Wedding drama always makes for some interesting drama. Tensions are high and everyone has a certain expectation and view of what the day's gonna be. Clearly, mother-in-law and bride had very different views of what was gonna happen. But this is the bride's wedding, and if she wants to have a traditional wedding, that's entirely up to her. You can't just completely disregard that person's wants, let alone their culture. Our original poster doesn't seem to be coming off off as someone who needs to have things a certain way for the sake of tradition, but is rather doing it because that's what they want to do. If mother-in-law wants to offer some kind advice or, chime in once in a while with what she thinks will be helpful, then go for it. But it just doesn't sound like she's being constructive with any of her comments, and is rather just nagging and being annoying. At which point, I totally understand why the bride would snap. Not inviting her to her own son's wedding is kind of harsh though. You could just choose to not have her involved in any plan making going forward, and then at least you don't need to hear about this until the day of the wedding. Hopefully she would at least have the decency to keep her mouth shut on the day of, but maybe I'm giving her too much credit. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.